What is Paul Ryan going to say at tonight's convention? That's the question everyone's anticipating, and we're going to try and answer it right here, right now on the News Hub. Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Simon Constable. And we got Corey Boles coming to us live from Tampa. There he is in the screen to tell us. So much anticipated. Everyone's waiting for this. It's going to rouse the party base, we understand, but how is he going to do that?
That's certainly the hope of the party hierarchy, is that Paul Ryan comes here and does indeed rile up the base. I think one could observe after last night's speeches that folks in the convention hall weren't as excited after Governor Chris Christie's speech as perhaps GOP operatives would have hoped. Paul Ryan, though, is a darling of the party, certainly of the party's conservative base. We expect that he's going to deal with his vision of America, which is a much more limited size of the federal government, limited role for the federal government, and an America that emphasizes private enterprise and individuality. Of course, the central theme of Mr. Ryan's plan is an ambitious overhaul of the Medicare program, of course, the federal government program that provides health care for old people. Mr. Ryan would, over the course of many years, would overhaul the program for people 55 or under. He would provide the option of receiving federal subsidies towards the cost of health insurance they could buy in the private marketplace, as opposed to continue to rely on the existing Medicare program. Democrats have pilloried the approach, saying that it would gut Medicare, that it would end up with elderly people paying far more than they do currently for health care insurance, and in many cases not able to do so. However, for the GOP base that are gathered here in Tampa, it is red meat, and I should imagine that they will react quite favorably to his vision.
And you're thinking perhaps more favorably than they reacted to Chris Christie last night. One thing that I find interesting about Paul Ryan is he touched what the so-called third rail of American politics, which is entitlements, which is broadly speaking Social Security and Medicare, and he's touched it, he's grabbed it head on, hasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, there's not many politicians in the current landscape who are willing to be as blunt with the American people about the long-term fiscal problems facing the government. And all of those of us who do this for a living are well aware that Medicare is facing a fiscal crunch, that over the longer term, so too is Social Security. But perhaps that message isn't that widely accepted or understood in America by people. Paul Ryan is saying, listen, we've got to do something now. We've got to start taking action now to address these problems. Otherwise, there will be no Medicare. There will be no Social Security in the future. You can argue with his vision, and of course, many Democrats would do so readily, but he is one of the few mainstream politicians right now who is standing up and saying quite bluntly to the American people, something has to be done.
So, Corey, the mood down there in Tampa, is it a mood of a certain victory, do you think, or is it still a mood of, my goodness, we've got our work cut out for us in the next few weeks?
I think somewhere in between. I would describe it as a mood of a rising tide of enthusiasm. People here, it's no secret that the Republican faithful until now have been somewhat reluctant to rally around Mitt Romney. I think people are growing to like what they see. Of course, the candidate himself only appeared briefly last night and hasn't yet addressed the gathered faithful, but they heard from his wife, Ann Romney, last night. As we already mentioned, they also heard from the popular New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. They're going to hear from his VP pick, Mr. Ryan, tonight. I think folks down here they're certainly more enthusiastic than they were when I was in St. Paul 4 years ago, when it was Senator John McCain at the top of the ticket.